Co-Chief Investment Officer Troy Gajewski, Bulltick Capital Markets Chief Strategist Kathryn Rooney Vera, and Michael Lee Strategy Founder Michael Lee. Great to see everybody this morning. Thanks very much for being here. Well, we've got this inflation disaster, Kathryn, and, look at the soaring price of gasoline. Now, Chuck Schumer is hoping that tapping into the energy reserve will help here. Look, the administration has been considering tapping into the petroleum reserve now for a couple of months. What's your take on the soaring price of gasoline now? 7-year high, Kathryn. Is this going to cut into earnings for retail? We've got a whole host of retail companies reporting earnings this week.
Yeah, inflation is probably the biggest threat going into next year as it was this year, Maria. And I think the threat for 2022 is stagflation, which is inflation is allowed to run rampant, combined by massive fiscal spending, social spending out the wazoo, right? And then we have gas prices through the roof as a result of the government trying to move into green energy at a very rapid pace. The decline or the closing of the pipelines has contributed to that. And the government is still thinking about closing yet another pipeline in Michigan, Line 5. So that would only add fuel to the fire with regard to inflationary prices. Then we have a Fed out of touch with reality, Maria, which I think is concerning from the perspective of getting behind the curve on inflation. The Fed focused primarily on the labor market, which is already red hot, and I would say is already at maximum employment, with the Fed still considering needed improvements on that front. So that to me says that the Fed is going to come into a very difficult position next year, and that's going to be either they completely lose credibility on inflation fighting and the market drops as a result, or they have to jack up interest rates in such a severe magnitude and rapidity, Maria, that I think could throw risk assets really out the window. So stagflation is the biggest threat next year. I have to open the reserves for oil prices, because that just adds more inflationary pressures to an environment that is already threatening a Fed that has to increase interest rates, and that I think is what is the biggest threat: stagflation for 2022.
Yeah, and Kathryn, it's a vicious cycle, right? I mentioned this op-ed in the Journal earlier. It's called "Democrats Invite More Inflation and Political Disaster." They say raising rates would almost certainly subdue inflation, but it creates another problem for lawmakers, and that is rising interest costs. The national debt grew so much during the pandemic that every percentage point rise in interest rates will add more than $100 billion to interest payments every year, Kathryn. So yes, the implications of all of this spending are wide and deep.
Oh, they are, in fact, and we have a 10% already fiscal deficit. It's not going lower. All of that COVID-related stimuli, Maria, we knew from the beginning was only going to convert into massive social spending, and that's not going anywhere. We're just adding additional social spending on that. So the debt burden is just going to continue to increase as the Fed inevitably has to increase rates. That's going to increase the cost of payment of those interest payments on U.S. debt.
All right, great conversation, everybody. Troy Gajewski, Kathryn Rooney Vera, and Michael Lee. Great to see you all. Thank you so much.